Hello, my name is J.T. Clark. I live in Boones Mill, Virginia, up in Franklin County, with my wife, Terry Lee Clark. We've been married for 33 years and we have 3 daughters, Jordan, Caitlin, and Whitney, and 1 granddaughter. I want to speak to you a little bit about some challenges that I experience when it comes to behavioral health and mental health. The last time I remember being happy as a child was about the time I was completing 8th grade in junior high. As I entered my 9th grade year, I began to experience issues of withdrawal and isolation and really losing enjoyment in the things that I had found great pleasure in. As I moved into 10th grade, it worsened and I fell into a depression. And my parents encouraged me and moved to help me get some professional help to figure out maybe what was going on. Didn't understand what it was I was depressed about. I just felt a deep shame, a self-hatred. I felt like damaged goods, and I didn't know why. After some day treatment type of programs and some counseling, I reached a place where I wanted to end my life. And my mom became really worried about me, and she filed for a temporary detention order, a TDO. And one night, members of the local sheriff's department showed up at my home, and they escorted me out to their police car, placing me in the back seat, and they drove me from where we lived in Northern Virginia to the State Mental Health Hospital in Charlottesville. At that point in my life, I had gotten involved in some volunteer fire department activities and had become friends and known a lot of the people in the first responder community, law enforcement community. And when these 2 law enforcement officers showed up to escort me to the hospital, they were people I knew. We're talking about the early 80s when this happened, and it was humiliating. It hurt. I was angry at my mom for what she had done, and I was embarrassed. It kind of drove home the very feelings and symptoms of my depression. It drove that deeper into me. When I got to the hospital in Charlottesville, I knew that I would be there for 72 hours based on the paperwork they had given me. And I made sure to answer all of the questions just the right way so that they could not keep me any longer. And after 72 hours, I was released. But what that 72 hours did for me gave me an opportunity to just kind of reflect on where I was at in my life. I didn't understand the depression I was experiencing. I did not know the source of it. I just know I did not want to live. Fortunately, I never felt that outwardly towards anybody else. It was all internal. But when I returned home, I was angry with my mom. The truth of the matter is she did exactly what she needed to do. And it took me a while to come to that understanding. Several days after returning home, I went to my parents and I said, I need to be hospitalized. I'm in trouble. And that was the beginning of a series of hospitalizations that I experienced beginning around 1982, 83, and continuing on to the mid-90s. I experienced circumstances where I attempted to take my own life. While I was in high school, and even after graduating, even after wedding my wife, even after my first child was born. In fact, it was 10 days after Jordan was born that the next cycle of deep depression and suicidal thoughts came over me. And I was hospitalized yet again. And after about a 20-day admission, I was released. And my wife was greatly concerned. She could tell that I had not arrived at that place of healing and she was in fear for my safety. She's always told me that she never felt threatened, that I was a threat to her or the children. And she walked alongside of me through all of this. I had tremendous spousal support. In 1993, I came home one day and Jordan wasn't quite 6 months old yet. And my wife said she just noticed something different about me. I took the baby and I went up to the nursery and I sat in the rocker, and she was experiencing colic, and I was just at peace, and I was just rocking Jordan. My wife said it should have been a warning sign for her. When we went to bed that night, I went down to the kitchen and we had a mega bottle of Tylenol. And I knew that if I consumed enough Tylenol, I wouldn't die right away. But in a matter of a few days, my liver would fail. And I knew my wife would be angry with me in the moment, but it would give me an opportunity to make peace with her before I drew my last breath. In the middle of the night, after I had consumed almost the entire bottle, I woke up sick. My wife came into the bathroom where I had been vomiting, and she didn't notice the nature of it. We went back to bed, and the next morning went down to the kitchen, and she saw the empty Tylenol bottle. She was crushed. She called 911. The ambulance arrived and the police arrived, and I was transported to the local hospital. It wasn't just any hospital. It was the hospital where I was employed. I was taken in through the emergency department, and they began to run tests on me. And our family doctor came to my wife and said, "He's done enough to get his wish." I encourage you to start praying now. Of course, this is the days before social media, and my wife was connected to the faith community, and she's calling prayer chains all over the community, asking people to pray for me. My wife had a great faith. It's not something I shared with her. She demanded the doctor make arrangements for me to have a liver transplant in Charlottesville. And the doctor said, it's too late. There's no opportunity for that. You see what his liver enzymes are. I was admitted to the intensive care unit. And my wife entered the room. And she grabbed a hold of me and she said, "You're going to start praying, and you're going to start praying right now." Within 24 hours of getting the dire news that my liver was failing and there was nothing that could be done about it, the reports of the lab results that they were continuing to run showed that my liver was responding. I stayed in intensive care for several days until I got to a place where I could be transferred to a psychiatric hospital, and this time I was taken to one in Washington, D.C. And it was through this series of hospitalizations that I had come to the realization and the discovery that I had been molested as a child. And all of the shame and the damaged good ideas were rooted in that hurt. And I began to recall the circumstances of it and the person involved. And every time I would think of it, I would go into a rage and anger and depression. wasn't something I could share with my family. It was a secret. And the more I kept it a secret, the harder it was to live. I never was hospitalized after that, but my thoughts of suicide never escaped me. Every morning I would wake up and I would look at my wife and I would tell her, I don't want to live. I want to be dead. And every day I would just have to figure out, how can I see past this moment to get to the next day? One night I was at work. It was about 2:30 in the morning. I was in charge of the hospital facilities. And I had reached another point of desperation. And with nobody around, I climbed up on my desk. I slid a ceiling tile back. I tied one end of the rope around the bar joist above the ceiling and the other end of the rope around my neck, and I stepped off the desk. As I hung there, trying to find a breath, my foot found the desktop again. I untied the rope and I climbed down off the desk. And I went home feeling like a failure. I couldn't even end my own life. I remember getting home and climbing into bed and just crying myself to sleep. In December of 2008, I was with some family celebrating the new year 2009 at my brother's house. And as we gathered around the dining room table to play cards, a man entered the house and he took a seat directly across from me. And as soon as he sat down, it all ran through me again. I got up from my seat and I went up to the bedroom that my brother had assigned to me and my wife, and I climbed in the bed and I was in a fetal position the rest of the night. Nobody understood. My wife knew. After that encounter, after that experience, I returned to Roanoke and I contacted an organization called Total Life Counseling in Roanoke. And I asked them what type of day treatment programs they had, and they told me a 3-week outpatient program, 8 to 5. And I signed up for the next rotation. And I told my wife and I told the counselors, I said, this is it. I've been doing this for 30 years. I can't carry it anymore. I don't know how to lay it down. If I can't get through it this time, it's the end. And we went through 3 weeks in that program, and when I got to the end of the 3rd week, I knew something had been tapped in me, but I wasn't finished. And I asked, could I repeat the program? And they said, well, it's the exact same thing you just did. And I said, I understand. And I started the 2nd cycle. On Wednesday of the 2nd week, my counselor suggested that I write a letter to the person that had molested me. Pour it all out in your words on the paper. It's not going to go anywhere, but just write everything that you're feeling, everything you're experiencing, write it all out. And when you get to the end, I want you to write a message of forgiveness. I went home with that assignment. And that night I put pencil to paper and it all poured out of me. And after I had written everything that I had experienced and felt, all of the anger, all of the rage, all of the depression and isolation and loss of life experiences and enjoyment with my wife and children, I reached the end for that part of the assignment where he wanted me to write a message of forgiveness. And I began to think, what must have happened to this person that he would do this to me? And when I wrote that message of forgiveness that night, there was I didn't recognize it as what it was, but it was like a peace. The next day, Thursday, when I showed up, something unexpected happened. The counselor asked me, read the letter out loud. Whew. Wasn't ready for that. And he told me, don't hold back. Read it with the expression that I wrote it. And I did. And as I poured those words out of my heart, tears flowing, sobbing, I got to the message of forgiveness. And I spoke forgiveness over the situation. And it was gone. I went home that night different. And when I awoke the next morning, my wife of 23 years heard words that she said are the sweetest words she's ever heard in her life. Because I turned to her and I said, I want to live. I want to be alive. And the strange thing about it, I thought everybody lived the way I had been living. I did not realize there were people walking around on this planet that wanted to be alive. I was delivered from my depression and suicidal ideation by moving in forgiveness toward the person that had hurt me. And for those of you that are in relationship, you have a spouse. And for those of you that are spouses of people that are struggling with mental health challenges, I just want to encourage you, as long as you're in a safe place, if you can walk alongside, there is hope. I'm evidence of it. And what my wife did for me for those 23 years of marriage, she could have walked out. She had every reason. People in our church were telling her to walk away from him. And she said, I took my vows before my Father in heaven, before our family and friends, and before my husband. I'm not leaving. And because she made a choice to walk alongside me, to see this thing through, I got to this place of healing. And to those providers, I don't think they called them community service boards back in that day, but I had a lot of people that were trying to get me to a place of healing. I was prescribed different medications. I was enrolled in different treatment modalities. It may not look like it worked at the time, but it kept me until I could get to that place. I thank every one of you for it. Those of you that have chosen this as your vocation, this is your profession, Thank you for stepping into these circumstances of people like myself. You matter. You make a difference. No matter the experiences that you might have that would discourage you, you've got a talent, you've got a skill that not everybody has. And I just want to encourage you to press in. Hold on. You're going to help somebody reach their breakthrough. I'm happy to say that since that day in 2009, I have not had to have further treatment. Not that there's anything wrong with treatment, but I have been delivered from my situation. I have not been depressed. I've had an opportunity to make up time with my wife and our daughters. Have there been some bumps along the way? Absolutely. But the outlook is a whole lot different. For me, my faith played a huge role in getting to this place of deliverance. But I didn't always have this faith. And I'm thankful for all aspects of the care that was delivered to me and the people that walked this path alongside me, because I know everybody doesn't have that. I just want to encourage you, hang in there. And in those moments where you can't see past this moment, lean on somebody. Thank you, and God bless.